Hi folks, it's Matt here from the Ask the R podcast, and today we're going to be deep diving into the background of the company. It's a question that comes up from time to time, and find out a little bit more about ROAVR and how we help people just like you keep their planning on track. So if that sounds like it might be of interest, stick around and stay tuned, and I will fill you in a moment. So yeah, this has come about. I got questioned by James actually when we were recording the last podcast. James is my 10-year-old son. If you've not listened to any of the other podcasts before, and basically James was asking, how on earth, Dad, did you end up in a position where you are talking about trees and ecology day in and day out? So I thought, do you know what? I'll deep dive into the background a little bit here, share a little bit of my personal story, and see if that's of interest. So, yeah, I don't think I've shared this before, but if you've read Unmanned, which is my first book, for those of you watching on YouTube, I'm just pointing up behind me. There's a copy of it up there. Unmanned is the first book I wrote, and essentially the first probably 2 or 3 chapters about that deep dive into my background. And I grew up in Aldershot, which is a military town in Farnborough. I grew up in Aldershot in Hampshire, which is a military garrison town. It was a military garrison town at the time. And I was surrounded by the military, but more importantly, I was surrounded by the Air Force. So at Farnborough, which is the next town along, is essentially the birthplace of British aviation. And at Farnborough, you had the Royal Aircraft Establishment. Now, my father worked at the Royal Aircraft Establishment at Farnborough all throughout the 70s. I think just into the beginning of the 80s when he left to become a countryside ranger. And his job basically was making full-scale or quarter-scale models for wind tunnel testing. So the way aircraft were designed back then is they made models, they tested the models, they made a prototype. Some guy was strapped into it, sent up into the atmosphere, and if it didn't blow up, it was a success. These days, obviously, with computer modelling, etc., things are a lot different. So that's how that worked essentially. So he worked there up until I'm fairly certain until I was born. So it was about 1977, 1978, something like that. So I'd always been surrounded by aviation through my childhood, and I was really, really interested in building model aircraft and flying control line planes where it's you had a little internal combustion engine on the aircraft, and used to spin round with this thing, getting really, really dizzy and flying it up and down, and it was super, super cool. So I basically wanted to become a pilot. I wanted to join the Army Air Corps, and I wanted to fly helicopters. But unfortunately, I think I was about 15, my eyesight started to failed to the point where I needed to wear glasses, and you can imagine what that was like at 15. Some may say I'm not the best looking creature in the world anyway, and that's obviously their opinion, but if you'd have seen pictures of me when I was 14, 15, it was pretty horrendous. I haven't got any hair at the moment for those of you on YouTube, but back then I had awful hair. Massive glasses, covered in spots, not much of a picture. And then my hopes of flying helicopters in the Army Air Corps was dashed essentially. So I thought, what can I do here? And I basically wanted to follow in my father's footsteps. So my dad had got fed up with getting up in the dark, coming home in the dark, working ridiculous hours at the Royal Aircraft Establishment. Now, it was pretty high pressure, but it was also quite exclusive as well. He worked on Polaris missile and Concorde and Tornado and all sorts of very, very cool things. But he wasn't seeing his family at all. So he basically decided that he was going to become a countryside ranger for Hampshire County Council, working on the Basingstoke Canal. And I won't go into it now and bore you, but my family used to own the Basingstoke Canal many, many years ago. So there was a bit of a family connection there. So when I grew up, I spent an awful lot of time out on the canal with him around wildlife, And it was a pretty awesome childhood, to be honest. So I thought, do you know what? If I can't fly helicopters for the Army Air Corps, I'm going to become a countryside ranger. So that's essentially what I did. I did a year's work experience on the Basingstoke Canal, and then I went to Merriswood College and did a 3-year HND sandwich course in countryside recreation. And then following that, I came out of there and I went to work for what is now Surrey Wildlife Trust, basically as a countryside ranger, which was kind of awesome. Off the back of that, I then started my own countryside contracting business. So we were involved in lots of habitat restoration projects all across Surrey, Hampshire, Berkshire, sometimes into Wiltshire as well, helping recreate heathland. And it was great fun, but it was all grant funded. That grant funding started to run out, and we moved into tree surgery. So I then went back to Merriswood College, got my tree surgery qualifications, and off I went running a successful tree surgery business. I did that right through till, I suppose, probably, I think it was about 2008, something like that. And then I sold that business and I sidestepped into arboricultural consultancy. So I went to Myers Co College and did the FDSC in ARB, and also some other distance learning courses as well. And I started working for an arboricultural consultancy in North Wales as a junior consultant, and eventually branched out on my own. About this time, my wife at the time moved to Guernsey in the Channel Islands. She worked for the BBC as a broadcast journalist, and I got an opportunity to come up to Scotland to help a forestry contracting company develop their business. So I came up here to help them develop their business, but I kept my arboricultural consultancy going. I kept all the contacts all over the UK, and really I was just passionate about helping people keep their planning on track. So I was running around all over the place like a blue-ass fly, like a complete and utter idiot, and I thought there's got to be a better way of doing this. So around 2012, 2013, forgetting about drones, because that's not relevant to this podcast, go and have a read of the book if you're interested in that. I set up ROAVR Group in its current form, and our model now is basically, we've got home-based consultants scattered all across the UK. So you'll note from my accent that I'm not Scottish, despite the business being headquartered up in Scotland. And we're just passionate about helping people, essentially. So we try and add as much value as we possibly can through the podcast, the books, all that kind of stuff, which is free to consume content. And it seems to be fairly well received from what we've seen, and it ties in with our company values as well. Which is awesome. So yeah, we've got these home-based consultants scattered all over the UK, both arboricultural and ecological consultants as well, helping people just like you get their planning on track. And with the survey season about to begin, really, there's no better time to have a chat with the team about your requirements. If you've got any specific questions, do reach out to us. We're always happy to help, even if it doesn't lead anywhere for us as a business. We just want to make sure that people get sensible advice. So if that sounds of interest to you, the best way to reach out and get contact with us is just to pop an email to support@rover-group.co.uk. That's support@rover-group.co.uk, and we look forward to hearing from you. So hopefully that's helpful, a little bit of background into how we've got to where we are today, and have a fantastic Friday, and I will speak to you next week when we're going to talk you right through exactly what is a tree survey.